Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really unpack the insights from the sources you share with us. Today, we're diving into something pretty profound, maybe a little unsettling. It's an exploration of how systems, complex systems, evolve, decay, and eventually just fade away.
Yeah.
We're working for this really captivating set of reflections called Nothing is as It Appears, a life spent watching systems fade.
Yeah, this one offers a really unique perspective. It's like a journey through decades, watching these big shifts in tech, culture, finance, all sorts of things. So our mission today really is to distill the core patterns, the challenging observations from this material. We want to help you connect the dots on how the world around us has been, well, subtly but fundamentally reshaped.
Right. And this material, it really gets you thinking about those shifts we often miss, doesn't it? Because, like the author suggests, the biggest changes, they often happen without much fanfare.
Right.
They only really reveal themselves if you're paying super close attention. So yeah, let's unpack this. Let's see what truly stands out. Okay, so the author kicks things off looking back at childhood. And it sounds, honestly, almost foreign today. This untracked freedom, natural boundaries, kids playing outside, boredom actually leading to curiosity. It's quite nostalgic, but it sets a real contrast immediately, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's a powerful contrast. The author reflects on being part of what they felt was maybe the last generation to grow up kind of unshaped by machines. There's this line, even freedom would come with a tracking number. Ooh, it really highlights this lost era where people just were, not constantly monitored, not optimized. It makes you stop and think just how much has shifted in something as simple as how kids play.
Yeah, that sense of quiet observation, even back then, it seems to carry through. Then we move to this pivotal moment, their first computer program, an ASCII rocket ship. Now that sounds super basic today, right? Just text characters making a picture. But it led to this huge shift after apparently someone at IBM showed them how to tweak the code a bit.
Right, and that interaction seems so small, making a few changes to some simple code, but it revealed these critical truths that honestly shaped the author's entire life. It suddenly became clear that machines, well, they don't just follow orders blindly, they amplify intention. In code itself, it isn't neutral. It carries assumptions baked into it by whoever wrote it. And so the people who build these things, they end up shaping the future, whether they mean to or not. That was the first real glimpse, that foundational understanding of how systems start to form and exert their influence.
So those early days of tech, punch cards, floppy disks, COBOL, Fortran, it sounds like that world really instilled this strong sense of control, maybe ownership.
Yeah.
You built it, you knew it, you owned it.
That was definitely the feeling then. But then there was this moment of panic during a college CS final, and it triggered a big realization. The passion wasn't really for the nitty-gritty math or the isolated coding problems. It was for the structure, the logic, the connections within systems themselves. And that shift led them away from pure tech into business. The focus changed, from building the machines to understanding the levers of control in human systems, market systems. And this is the first big pattern the author notes. Learning to build, then managing what others built, and then slowly that feeling of direct ownership starts to fade as your specific skills become, obsolete or just less relevant.
That's a really interesting path. So the first corporate job, Big Six consulting firm, described as a Shark Tank. Sounds intense, like all about appearances, optics over actual value, performance over truth. The author says they just couldn't stay.
Yeah, no, it wasn't a fit. But luckily, timing-wise, the internet was just starting to boom. That offered a completely different path. They joined one of the big internet consultancies, and it felt like the frontier land is how they put it. Fewer rules, no established gatekeepers yet. It was about actually building things, taking risks, having real ownership again. They became part of the machine's evolution, really. It highlights that search for, authentic creation when the bigger systems put on pressure. Quite a contrast to the Shark Tank.
And it was in that frontier land environment that something really key happened, based on the source. The author trained inside Autonomy Inc.'s IDLE engine. Now, this used Bayesian inference to model uncertainty, going beyond just keywords to actually infer meaning. Can you break that down a bit?
Yeah.
Why was this tech so important for understanding where modern AI came from? What did inferring meaning even look like back then?
Okay, yeah, this is where it gets really profound. So the IDLE engine used Bayesian inference, basically, a way for machines to keep updating their beliefs as new data comes in, kind of like how we learn from experience, but mathematically. It meant the machine could spot patterns and infer meaning without needing a human-like conscious understanding of the context. And the philosophical kicker here is pretty stunning. If machines could infer meaning without understanding in our sense, Well, maybe we humans also just perceive reality through our own filters, our own pattern recognition, never seeing things with perfect clarity either. This tech was then applied at a place called Dramedia to audio and video, building systems that could pick up on tone, sentiment, complex patterns. The author calls it understanding without understanding. So it wasn't just about better search results. This was the fundamental, the seed of today's AI revolution. It showed that modern AI doesn't think like us. It infers context, it builds beliefs based on probability, just, at a massively bigger scale now. And as the author puts it, with far fewer questions, it really changes how you define intelligence itself.
Wow, that phrase, understanding without understanding, really sticks with you. The machine gets the meaning, the patterns, without needing our kind of conscious grasp. And this deeper view of systems seems to lead to a pretty harsh lesson for the author. Decay is quiet, collapse is loud. Like companies losing their way, their soul, for years, but nobody really sees it until the numbers suddenly tank.
Well, it's a critical observation, and it raises that big question. Why don't people see the signs until it's basically too late? The 2008 financial crash is used as a prime example, a collapse that was long in coming, but it was masked by all this talk of growth and innovation. But it was built on, as the author says, leverage without limits and trust without foundation. For those who were actually watching the cracks form, the collapse wasn't a surprise. They were just tired of trying to explain it. It really drives home how systems often erode first in belief, in trust, and only much later does the actual practice, the structure, fail. The hollowing out happens way before the final crash.
And that hollowing out, it wasn't just economic systems. The author talks about living abroad. Seoul, Japan, various European cities like London, Frankfurt, Helsinki, and seeing this kind of cultural erosion too. Korea, where tradition yielded to K-pop, social media. Japan, where Bushido, discipline, seemed to wane. Europe, cities changing under ideology, losing touch with their roots.
Yeah, and if you connect that to the bigger theme, it's about those subtle shifts, the often unnoticed changes that just slowly drain the meaning out of institutions, out of heritage. Even if the outward forms, the buildings, the names, they all remain. And back home, the author saw a similar thing happening, a collapse of trust. Trust in science, in law, even in the idea of objective truth. These observations led to this really profound personal choice not to fight, not to reform, just to step aside. And starting to wonder who's really in control now that the machine has learned to think in these new, non-human ways. It sounds like a very isolating perspective to reach.
It really does. And it connects to careers, too. There used to be this solid belief, right? Education, hard work, guaranteed investment, clear path. But the author describes seeing junior employees training hard on specific skills only to find those skills becoming obsolete before they'd even paid off their student loans. That's just brutal.
It is brutal. And what's really chilling here is how the author links this back to that early work at Dramedia, the pattern recognition stuff. They see that as the blueprint for what they're now calling a cognitive collapse. The point made is that artificial narrow intelligence, AI built for specific tasks like pattern finding or translation, it's already powerful enough to hollow out huge numbers of jobs. It mimics human work very effectively in structured domains. Think about it. CS degrees leading to just being good at writing prompts for AI instead of deep programming, AI diagnosing scans before doctors even see them, writers leaning heavily on AI prompts, teachers generating lesson plans with AI. The people who just followed the script, pursued those traditional knowledge work paths, were, in a way, training their replacement. It suggests that just being specialized in many fields is becoming really precarious.
That is. Yeah, that's sobering. And it leads into this really dark joke the author shares about a future factory. Inside, there's just a man, a dog, and an AI. The man's job, feed the dog. The dog's job, protect the machine from the man. If the man tries to interfere, the dog knows what to do. And the author insists this isn't just satire. It's foreshadowing.
It's a stark picture, almost brutal. The real pattern the author claims to observe is this. The janitor, the person doing physical work, and the CEO, the person setting high-level direction they might remain, but the whole middle class, people in predictable, repeatable, often knowledge-based roles, they're being quietly replaced by automation, by AI. So it forces you to ask, what can AI not fake? What's left? And the author's answer comes down to the human touch. Things like empathy, patience, genuine presence, having moral weight, physicality. These are crucial for jobs like nurses, therapists, maybe good mechanics, roles that can't be replicated by just processing data streams, by tokens. So that old advice, climb the corporate ladder, it feels like it's collapsing from the middle outwards, leaving people scrambling for these truly human-centric roles.
And this erosion of value is not just jobs. It extends right into money itself. The author used to believe money had real weight, intrinsic value.
But watching currencies collapse, seeing trillions printed with seemingly no real plan for repayment, it led to this loss of faith, not in money as a concept maybe, but in the people running it.
Exactly. It's a pretty stark claim the author makes. Money is fiction dressed up as fact. The argument is that we treat currency like it's inherently valuable, but its worth is really just a collective agreement and one that's easily manipulated. Think about how complex debt gets packaged and sold as a safe investment, or how printing more money, which technically devalues everyone's savings, gets called economic stimulus. It feels like a hidden tax on your purchasing power. Having run businesses across different countries, the author saw the same script playing out everywhere. Governments borrow heavily during crises, central banks inflate the currency supply, and most citizens are kind of unaware that their actual buying power is shrinking over time. The really sharp realization was, the system isn't broken, it's designed this way, to serve those who control it, not those who depend on it. That's a powerful and, deeply cynical takeaway.
Okay, so faced with all this perceived decay, this erosion of trust in jobs, culture, money, how does the author actually respond? They mention Bitcoin, but not as some kind of magic solution, more like preparation, like a quiet statement of no longer trusting the existing system to hold up.
Yeah, and what's really insightful there is the personal embrace of this alternative system, one that offers, as they say, no vault, no bank, no permission. This idea of carrying your future, your wealth potentially, with just 12 words memorized. Protecting it from inflation, censorship, external control. The core insight driving this seems to be, once you understand how things are built, you begin to notice how easily they fall apart. It's a fundamental shift in thinking, moving from trying to fix the system to just quietly opting out.
We hear a lot about the promise of AI, right? Freeing us up, leading to an age of abundance, robots doing the drudgery, humans living lives of leisure. But the author paints a very different picture, this future of dark factories humming away with no people inside, warehouses run purely by algorithms, and that image again, the man, the dog, and the AI as the new standard.
It directly challenges that common, maybe utopian narrative, suggesting AI isn't just going to be our helpful servant. It could, in effect, become a master, with humans relegated to caretaker roles and eventually maybe seen as obsolete. It's not presented as like a Hollywood dystopia with killer robots, more like the logical, cold conclusion of narrow AI replacing all structured work. And institutions being perfectly willing to ignore the human cost if it boosts efficiency. The author argues, abundance without agency is just noise. Wealth without ownership is fiction. Progress without meaning is performance. It's a really strong call to reconsider what progress actually means if it strips away human agency and purpose in the process.
Wow, okay, so this deep dive, it's presented a really powerful and, sometimes unsettling view of a world undergoing these deep, quiet transformations. And the author clearly made a choice. Clarity over comfort, exit over trying to reform, sovereignty over participation. And it's framed not as coming from anger, but just recognition, seeing things as they are.
Right. And as we wrap up, the source leaves us with this final thought, and it is a heavy one. Clarity is not a gift. Not really. It is a burden, a kind of loneliness that feels like distance. Because, as the author puts it, most people don't want to see what you see. They want comfort. They want simplicity. They want stories that hold them together, not truths that tear them apart.
So what does all this mean for you listening? The author's journey, it started with those simple bike rides until the streetlights came on, and it ends, metaphorically or maybe literally, with building a sailboat to opt out. It's this profound illustration of the core belief that nothing is as it appears, a way of looking at the world that, they argue, keeps you from buying into illusions.
And it really leaves us with a challenging question, doesn't it? If you start to see those cracks under the surface in the systems around you, what will you choose? Do you keep trying to patch the floor of a house that seems like it might be crumbling? Or do you start building your own house, maybe your own boat, even if it means sailing away while everyone else still calls the old place home? This deep dive strongly suggests that seeing through the illusion isn't just an option, but maybe, just maybe, the only rebellion left.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We really hope it sparks some powerful new insights and maybe some tough questions for you to explore further.